As you know, on Sunday night or Monday morning of every week, we post a new expository semiotics explaining why we would choose which lectionary readings. But in these readings, our dream is, and our desire is, to help you read the signs and fondle the details and spot the seminal metaphors, the condensed signs and the stories that are key for preaching to a digital culture. So strap on your seatbelt and join us as we prospect our passages for today. This week, you're about ready to get a bonus and my first Teach the Story. There's this reading, this passage from Hebrews, the 9th chapter, 11 to 14, that I could not let pass. And so it's less though hints on how to preach it than making sure we understand what the significance of this little portion is, and this little piece of it that most people have no idea even exists, what it means. And so this is a teach the story. So a Len talk that is less a preach the story than a teach the story. The passage is Hebrews. And I'm just going to read it for you, Hebrews 9. And I'm going to read it for you in the beginning, and then we may read it again in the end, and it may come alive, or you may come alive to it in a whole new way after a little teaching, just a little rabbinical instruction from me. So, but when Christ came as high priest of the good things that are now already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not made with human hands, that is to say, is not a part of this creation. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God. Now the phrase here that I want you to pay attention to is verse 12. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place, in other words, the Holy of Holies, as high priest now. He's presenting Jesus as high priest, the only one that could enter it once a year. Once for all, by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. And how much more than the blood of Christ? Did you catch this? The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer. What is this about? The ashes of a heifer. And the assumption is that you know that it's a red heifer. So what is the tradition of the red heifer? What is the meaning of the red heifer? Why is the red heifer so significant and important? And how have we missed this? Maybe you haven't missed it, and good for you. But let me just kind of underline it, reinforce it, if you have missed this whole significance of the red heifer. There's a couple of reasons why I'm doing this now. So I'm doing two Len talks, basically, a Preach the Story one and a Teach the Story one this week on this lectionary passage for the 31st of October. One is, I want to help you get ready for Christmas. And you cannot really understand nativity scenes, creches, and the colorations that you find in most of those nativity scene and creches without understanding this tradition of the red heifer. Because there will be a donkey, and we have our second volume coming out. Saint Is came out last year. The story of Christmas from the standpoint of the donkey, called Izzy. But this year we're going to release, as of December 1st, the second volume in this 3-volume story of the birth of Jesus and the story of Jesus from the standpoint of the donkey. But there will always be a donkey. You will always have some straw somewhere. There will be a manger. And there will be the Holy Family. But along with the donkey, you may or may not find a camel. But you will always have we just look at it and say, well, it's a cow. Oh, look at the color of the cow. It's most often this russet red, but not ginger red, but kind of earth red. By the way, earth and red are almost the same in Hebrew, red earth. So it's more a brownish red. And you will also see Mary most often with reddish hair. And many times, if Jesus has hair as a little baby, he will be in red, emblazoned with this reddish tint to his hair. What's going on with this color red? I also, and I'm having a little fun here, but November 12th, in 2 weeks, Taylor Swift is re-releasing her song that was the crossover song, the first song to transition her from country to pop. And she's re-releasing it after it had been released in 2012. It's coming out again in a whole new version. Loving You is Red. Loving You is Red. She has this song that presents various moods associated with various colors. And the red color is the color of love. There is a red thread running through the Bible. And when we think of holy colors, we most often think of maybe blue, the symbol of heaven, symbol of sky, symbol of heaven, or we may even think of purple, the ecclesiastical symbol for bishops and other high functioning royalty. But red, just like in the spectrum, red is the first color. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Red is the first color. In some ways, red is the most complex color of the Bible, but it's also the red thread that ties everything together. It's hugely complex, more complex maybe than any other color, because it's a color of inversions and oppositions. And red is associated with two images, fire and blood, for example. But fire can be good or bad. Blood can be good or bad. It's a symbol of life. It's a symbol of love, but it's also a symbol of death and a symbol of violence. So you've got it's really these inversions, these oppositions in one word, in one color. Red is the symbol of life. The life force in the flesh is the blood, Leviticus 17:11. And as Taylor Swift has made clear, love is the color, red is the color of love. Losing him was blue like I'd never known. Missing him was dark gray, all alone. Forgetting him was like trying to know somebody you never met, but loving him was red. And Jesus' love for the world, God's love for the world, was red. And this is partly the backstory of the red heifer. Let me give you some examples of how complex this color is, even these inversions and oppositions, even our everyday language. We talk about red in tooth and claw, which is the symbol of red as violence and death. But then we got red carpet, which is a symbol of celebration and glory and honor. And we got, some of you may drive an arrest me red car. You know what that is? It's a car that is known for being hot, fast, and just invites the police to stop you. I come from a part of the country that's also often called rednecked, or you know what it's like to be red-faced. So this is a color that is hugely, hugely complex. I love how language betrays us. Sometimes Caucasians get red when we're hot. We get green when we're sick. We get yellow when our kidneys fail, and we get gray when we die. And we have the nerve to call other people colored. I mean, so partly our colorations are suggestive of our moods that we're in, our state of being, and our what it means that we are all in some way colored people. Now, there's one special sacrifice offered by the high priest, which was not daily or even annual. It could take place once a century, once a couple of centuries, once a millennium. It did take place with some of the ashes of this every year at Passover, and that is the symbol here of the red heifer. Now, a heifer, just to be clear, increasingly we don't come from farms, so let's be clear about this. A heifer is a young female cow which has never given birth to a calf. And a red heifer is an anomaly because most cows don't have a skin color that is red. But again, we're not talking about this blazing strawberry, blonde, reddish, but it's a coloration that could have no blemishes. And the instructions for the sacrifice of the red heifer are given in Numbers 19. It was to be a red heifer in the prime of its life, without blemish, one that has never been yoked. So anything, even if you put a blanket on it, it couldn't. It was blemished and unclean. It couldn't be sacrificed. The red heifer was to be taken outside the city when it was slain, and there it was to be burned by fire till there was nothing left. That's Numbers 19:5. When the ashes of the red heifer were to be gathered, it was used then in very sparingly. That's why one red heifer, and they're supposedly from the time of Moses to the destruction of the second temple, there were only 9 red heifers that were sacrificed and found and sacrificed and cultivated. And even one black hair would disallow it. So it could not be used. And it was used to cleanse the most difficult things to cleanse. And of course, the most difficult thing was this opposite of red, which is life, but it's also death. And so any contact with death, if somebody died in their tent, there had to be this cleansing ritual, and that's where the ashes of the red heifer were to be used. And you'll see this in Numbers 19:17, and mixed with some water. Now, you could just have 1 or 2 flecks of ashes, because that's all you needed, because it was seen as so powerful. But it was the only thing that had the power to cleanse the worst uncleanliness and compromised. And so from a living source, you add living water to the ashes. You mix it, and you dip a hyssop plant, this herbal plant that basically you can't tell the difference from a lavender plant, except hyssop is bitter and lavender is sweet, but they look the same. I mean, if you've got an eye that can tell the difference, you're in the lavender business, because nobody else can. And you sprinkle it on the tent where somebody died, or the person, and on both the 3rd day and the 7th day of the week after the death or the contact with the dying person. So you have a 7-day process of cleansing, and then the Israelite would be deemed clean and would be allowed to go back into the temple and to function. Purge me with hyssop, That's what this means. And I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Psalm 51:7. The ashes of the red heifer were seen as keeping the nation of Israel clean before God. There were only 9 red heifers sacrificed in Jewish history. And the significance of the expectation of looking for the 10th is huge. The 10th red heifer. I want to just specify here something I mentioned earlier, that the Hebrew word for red, aduma, is etymologically linked for the word earth, Adam, Adama. So aduma, Adama. Human, from the ground, earth, red earth. So you have here an identification of this red heifer with the earth itself and with Adam, the first Adam. Now, let me just get really specific here. What would disqualify a heifer from being seen as a red heifer that could be worthy of sacrifice? The cow must be at a minimum within its 3rd year of life. In other words, it's got to be 2 years plus. It needs to be completely red, but that means earth color, red earth. 1 hair of a different color disqualifies it. All physical blemishes disqualify it. Now that goes for all sacrificial animals, but the red heifer especially. Any work that heifer has done disqualifies it. And by work, I mean people not just using it to plow, putting a yoke on it, which is forbidden, but even leaning on it. Okay, even it worked to prop somebody up. That itself was a disqualifying feature. If the heifer is pregnant, or even if a male has mated with it, is disqualified. So to fulfill all the qualifications and specifications was very, very difficult, even beyond the color itself. And so that's why the Hebrew people in history got so excited when, hey, we think we have a red heifer. And so when that heifer then was protected and kind of fortressed so that people couldn't get to it and it wouldn't bump into itself, and it was babied and spoiled. Now here's Maimonides about the red heifer. And I'm going to quote here. 9 red heifers were offered from the time that they were commanded to fulfill this mitzvah until the time when the temple was destroyed, a second time. The first was brought by Moses, our teacher. The second was brought by Ezra. 7 others were offered until the destruction of the second temple. The 10th will be brought by the King, Messiah. May he speedily be revealed. In other words, the 10th red heifer was a sign of Jesus, of the Messiah's coming. And so even Orthodox Jews to this day are looking, scanning the earth, looking for that 10th red heifer. And when that is reinstated, the sacrifice of that red heifer, that will be the preparation for the coming of the Messiah. What this Hebrews text is telling us is that Jesus Christ is the true red heifer. That he is the ultimate sacrifice and the final sacrifice beyond which nothing else is needed. Jesus came, the anointed one, the Messiah, came to fulfill the law. Remember, Matthew 5:17-20. And the red heifer of the old covenant kind of foreshadowed the coming for these early Christians of the work of Jesus. Notice, remember all the disqualifications? Jesus died where? Outside the city. Some actually argue that he died outside the city at the exact spot where those other red heifers were sacrificed, because the high priest could see directly into the temple from the offering site, and the centurion soldier at the crucifixion saw the curtain in the temple torn. You read that in Matthew 27:54. A red heifer was sacrificed at the prime of his life. Jesus died in the prime of his life. Jesus was without fault or blemish. Jesus died that those unclean before God might be washed, sanctified, and justified in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. And then you got this hyssop connection here. Hyssop throughout the scripture is a symbol of faith. We have a lot where I live of what's called madrone trees, or in Canada they're called arbutus. By called madrona. But the madrona tree is famous. It has red bark, but it's famous because it will only grow in the most difficult of places. It won't grow where it's easy. It grows in rocks and outcroppings that you would never expect anything to grow there. It doesn't know how to be a tree because it sheds its bark and keeps its leaves. It produces berries when everybody else is long done, and in the fall when there aren't berries anywhere. And so the hyssop is like that. It grows in the most inhospitable places, grows from natural rock outcroppings. It was seen as a plant that was good for food, but also good for medicine. So it was a healing plant. And here we have, in this Hebrews passage, the portrayal of Jesus, I believe, as our red heifer, the 10th red heifer, the new Adam. Adama, red earth human. Adam, from the ground. Now let's visualize this one more thing. The Holy of Holies, this cube, is the most sacred space for Jews on earth. And it was a symbol, really, of the Garden of Eden. And it was a symbol, prophetic symbol, of one day our return to the Garden of Eden. But until then, the only one who could go there was the high priest once a year, and where he would sprinkle with blood and hyssop, and into that blood and hyssop were mixed some cedar wood, which is red. There was also a red cloth. So you got this huge red theme going here. But the veil that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies, remember, it's as thick as a man's fist. So let's say 4 to 5 inches thick. But on that veil were embroidered this incredible needlework of cherubim and seraphim, these composite beings, one of them holding a sword. Now, do you remember when we were expelled because of the fall? Adam and Eve left, but they could not go back in to return to the tree of life, which kept them from ever dying. But they, by a cherubim holding a flaming sword. how did people see this? Well, when not everybody could see this, but when you went to the holy place, most holy place, in front of the veil was what? The golden lampstand, which really was an almond tree. The golden lampstand was not just a lampstand. It was an almond tree with all 7 branches budding, blossoming, and producing fruit. So you could see the incredible needlework and embroidery done by the temple virgins who work full time, actually, taking care of the tapestries, cleaning all of the cloths and the linens and the sacred, but this incredible, and replacing it, incredible veil. That was what? Rent in twain. Unzipped from top to bottom, and the temple was opened. In other words, the cherubim and seraphim with their flaming sword had ended their mission. They were retired. We don't need you anymore because we are now what? The last Adam has brought us back, who did what the first Adam couldn't do. The last Adam has brought us back into the garden where we can once again sing, and he walked with me and he talked with me. And all of these rituals of blood, and we need no more, because Jesus' blood has covered it all. And we are now back in the garden. Do you remember the first person Jesus appeared to after his resurrection? Mary. Did she recognize him? No. She thought he was what? The gardener. We are back in the garden. This is just the biblical imagination here. I hope it's a sanctified one. I hope it's a sacred one. I hope it's a biblical one. But up until we disobeyed God, we ate plants. We were vegetarians. We didn't eat meat. The first time when we fall from our state of being made a little lower than God, and we became a little lower than the angels after this, the first animal slaughtered, God slaughtered. And God slaughtered it to do what? God was a clothier, a designer. God made for us a leather outfit for Adam and for Eve. And where did that leather come from? What's the first animal that God slaughtered to make the leather outfits that God put on us and clothed us with? Now, nobody knows. But it had to be some animal. What animal do you think it might have been? This is why in Christian art, most often, you will see the red heifer at the nativity. You will see Mary in red hair, and you will see Jesus, the last Adam, with hair the red earth color. The story of the red heifer.